Well, hi.
Hello. So
We have a third chair just in case
for
Katie
producer,
joins.
but she's not. The producer isn't here at the moment. So this is episode 250 actually. So there we go. Yeah, that's my coffee now. Anyway,
That's my coffee. Go away.
it isn't anymore.
It's ours.
Okay, it's your coffee. There we go. So
That's just
what do I
rude.
want to
That's
talk about
just really
today?
rude.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about, as usual, I wanted to talk about coaching actually, and we're gonna ask Janina her experience with an Olympic sport because I think fundamentally in the functional fitness movement, because it is so new, inspired by CrossFit. In a way, I believe we really misunderstand the relationship coach-athlete. Or at least let me put it this way. It's very, very different in the functional fitness world, but some things are not always for the better. Some of the things are good, some of the things are bad. So what I wanted to talk about was to talk about the pros and cons of the way we used to coach, aka professional sports, Olympic sports, and what is today now like your typical coach in his own gym or a CrossFit gym, and the way they treat with when we're going back to really what is one-on-one sessions, private and semi-private session. But I think the world of private and semi-private session has profoundly changed because of CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about the goods and the bads of that. So for my coaches and then, for my athletes as well, right? But I think there is an awakening that needs to happen on the functional fitness world from the coach's perspective on how to deal with private, semi-private group classes, but also on the receiving side, on the athletes, clients, whatever you want to call it, and their expectation that I think now are completely out of whack. So to go into that, obviously, we're going to draw upon your experience with an Olympic sport, my experience toward a niche sport that is strongman, right? Or even
And
jiu-jitsu
jiu-jitsu,
at the
yeah.
time, which was at the time a niche sport. It's a bit more now, but very much result-based, objective-based in that sense, which means testing all the time, right? Versus the art of getting fit and this like this. But first, I want to go at it from a financial incentive perspective to explain why we got to where we got.
Okay.
And then how we got to where we are. How we got to it, I want to go at it from a little bit of a history lesson from the you would say 90s and 2000s, but also from
Before I was born.
Yep.
Just flexing a little.
Just like that, exactly. But also from a epistemology perspective, seeking of truth from a scientific perspective. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So let me start with that point. So if you look at what science is whatever you want to call it, epistemology, the seeking of truth, you want to call it science, at the end it's the same process, right? It's hypothesis proven or disproven through evidence. That's really, and I don't care what is it that you do, that's the way to do it. So it's not science. Science is actually a form of that, right? It's just a rebranding of an idea that's always been there. A hypothesis has to be proven or disproven through different types of data. And then from there, we know if the thing is true or not. So science is it's a branch of epistemology, really. Right. So now, and this is where technology and the incentives, for example, or financial incentives, change profoundly the way we look at truth, if you see. So there are three types of evidence. You have what the epidemiologists what they call rationalist would say, which is logical evidence. That's something you get through, for example, through critical thinking. So in science, that's a very important part because that's the part that allows you to form an hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right. So that's again, critical thinking. Those are the rationalists, right? Everything is logical evidence. Then you have something that is called existentialist, which means your experience. That's what they call anecdotal evidence. That is based on your feeling, intuition, judgment, your own experience.
Yeah.
Right? Those are the existentialists. That's another form of, and the third form is what they call the empiricist, which is its empirical evidence, which in today's science is data, like the testing, the data that you acquire from that. So each part has their own issue because you're not supposed to be one. You're supposed to be all three. Because, for example, the 80s have seen the boom of technology, of testing and everything. And if you see, it's everywhere, but let's say in the fitness industry, everybody in the last 10, 20 years got in love with testing. The watches for the runners, that's where it started, right? And now everybody has HIV and HRV and stuff like that. Everybody has HIV. Everybody has HRV testers. That did not come out right. Let me put it this way. That's what she said.
You should have, if you would have just blamed it on your French accent. Yeah.
French accent. Anyway, so all, the watches first, and now, like even me, I talk about lactate all the time and everything, but it's one part of the equation because the reason people love testing so much is because it's so easy. Because once the technology exists, you don't have to do shit. You just have to press a button. And then you write it down and you've done your job. So that's the easiest job of the three once you have technology on your side. Does that make sense? So you have that push now, that bullshit push in the fitness world about they use science, demonstrated by science and everything. Right. And then if you push so hard in that direction, there's always the same fallacy within that camp, is that there is a difference between correlation and causation. Because you do not have a theory to go from, you cannot establish causation. You can only establish correlation. So if you're lazy and use technology to basically make your job easier and just do this and this and this, what you have is a set of data. But since you don't have an hypothesis that you can prove or disprove with that data outside of an idea, it's going to be very hard to differentiate between causation and correlation, which is why you see all the time. This is why in the fitness industry, you see those people citing a study all the time and saying percentage and everything. It's like, right, but that does not, most of the studies do not allow you to issue a causation, only a correlation. I see that the most with studies with nutrition. It's like the people who say, like half-fat diet did this, therefore high-fat diet causes the problem. So they're taking out the carbs. Because there is no theory there is no foundation of the argument to be proven or disproven. You just take a set of data and out of that make a conclusion. So this is the problem you see in math, in physics, everywhere, because they've used technology, aka algorithms, like what they call AI, to get a bunch of data and get a pattern out of it. And that pattern becomes a hypothesis, which is becomes the whole thing, which is entirely wrong, because all you got there now is an hypothesis, because you don't know if it's causation or correlation. So that means you created an hypothesis that now you have to prove. So this is why you see studies now, 80 to 90% of them in math or physics cannot be replicated because they were done on an algorithm. So the guy throws an idea, looks at the data, goes, there you go. All he established was correlation, that those two things happen at the same time.
Yeah.
And we suffer from that tremendously now because of the, honestly, laziness of the coaches that think they do their job just by measuring time or whatever. For example, like you did Fran it's Fran or whatever, it's like the deadlift. You went from 405 to 500 or 520, 425, let's say, on the deadlift. You gained 20 pounds. You got stronger. No, you got stronger on the deadlift. Right, but, and then this is where the hypothesis comes in. What is strength? Skill, muscle capacity, neural output. Did you improve on the neural output? Did you improve on muscle capacity? Did you improve on skill? Because if you improve the skill on the deadlift and you lift more weight, did you get stronger? Not overall. You just got better at the deadlift. So there's a difference between getting better at a skill and getting stronger overall. Yeah. But because all your job is measuring, I go from 405 to 425, I'm stronger now. No.
Yeah,
see what I mean? There's a correlation there, not a causation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's another, I think, and that's why the human part is so important with testing, is that you can get a 10-second faster friend. But if you're for example, cheat the reps, and you have like a ton of no reps, or you go to another federation where you can, for example, hit your deadlift instead of having to pull it like in the IPF meet or whatever. Is then the 20 pounds that you put on your deadlift still like valid? Like you need some context with the score
or we don't
as well.
even, or you even go the other way, which means the point of fitness is still sustainability.
Yeah, consistency.
For most, right? Like unless you add, so for example, that brings competition, and we're going to talk about that with Olympic sports, because this is where you're going to see the fallacy of Olympic sports.
Yeah.
It's, for example, like, yeah, you hit the sprint in the same conditions. Okay, that's great. But for example, for most of us, because we're going back to our normal businesses, gyms and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, they hit the 20 seconds on front, but now they can't train for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it's just the problem with being an empiricist is that you are so stuck on data that it turns you into objective-based mentality, which is always very short-minded. And on top of it, it's nearly impossible to differentiate correlation and causation.
Yeah.
For example, you get better on front, and then that's it. But maybe you're having a good day or a bad day. Maybe you were like, I mean, but you will never know because no hypothesis was proven or disproven in you getting the 20 second on front or the 20 pounds on a deadlift, because we still don't know what part of the training gets you the 20 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and this is the problem with truth, is it's not one of those. So for example, the rationalists, everything is critical thinking and logical. I'm very much on that side, right? Yeah, but you still have to test sometimes.
Yeah.
To know that you're actually proving forward.
Yeah.
Right. And then the existentialist comes in, because your experience within that reality matters.
Yeah.
Because if you're just a rationalist and an empiricist, then you can't make people succeed. And at the end, what we all do is for people. So for example, yes, your friend got up, your deadlift go up, you're stronger overall, but your anxiety is starting to get to the point that you cannot deal with the progress. So
yeah.
And by the way, like, how are you going to come up with a hypothesis without an anecdotal evidence that points you in the right direction? So people say, oh, it's anecdotal, it doesn't matter. That is not true.
No.
An anecdotal,
No.
like, the human system is extremely developed, and is still more developed than any computer out there. It gives us an inkling toward what causation is. Critical thinking allows you to take that idea and put it plainly so that it can be tested. But any science, any seeking of truth, starts with an anecdotal evidence, an idea that someone develops, that is going to put as an hypothesis through critical thinking, and then that is going to test to prove or disprove.
Yeah.
So the seeking of truth, science, whatever you want, is 1, 2, 3. The 80s, 90s, 2000 had profoundly changed the technology aspect because of computers, iPad, phones, and everything. So now people get enamored with the testing part, because for the same reason people put money into WhatsApp and stuff like that, because WhatsApp was bought for, like, I can't remember, like $5 billion, whatever. They had 12 employees at the time. So, the profit is maximum, right? So they want apps. This is what I faced when I was in San Francisco with all the autism people, is I was telling them one gym is 120 families.
And it was not interesting.
Yeah, it's 120 families, right? So imagine if we do 100 gyms.
Yeah.
Imagine how many that is.
Yeah.
And they have absolutely no interest in that. 10 gyms is 1,200. You go like, wait.
5 is even already great. You mean, like, it's...
So, but like, I'm like, plus I was telling them, like, we're starting to transform certain things, then we can do the testing from those gyms and everything. And none of them were interested in that. What they wanted was an app that you could get to every family in the US. I'm like, okay, but you have to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, and
like, you don't start.
You can even argue, is like, can an app replace the value of a gym with 100 family? Like, you can maybe with the app help someone a little bit, but with the training into the gym where
you don't get to the app before having the gym, because the gym is a place where you're going to test the stuff to make it to a point where it gets to an app and everything. The arrogance of the system right now is based on the laziness of people who don't want to figure out autism. They just want to make money. But bon, that's a medical world anyway, right?
Up.
So that's why they're so bent on technology, because they don't have to do any work. All those people, what they want to do is put their money in and then they back off.
Yeah. They
They
have a
don't, because they
completely
don't want to do
different
the work.
view. Yeah, they have a completely different view of those
But
things.
you know
than-
why? Because they don't have any anecdotal evidence of the thing. Because their kids are not autistic. They are not autistic, so they don't care. So I want to bring that back to training. And before we go into Olympic sports, I want to explain what my view is on that. So there's been in the fitness industry, if we include martial arts, there's been two seismic events. There's been Jiu-Jitsu and then CrossFit. Those really changed in the last, let's say, 40 years. Those were the two seismic events. So Jiu-Jitsu comes in. You have to understand the world before Jiu-Jitsu. The world before Jiu-Jitsu is you had a martial arts studio and boxing and Thai boxing gyms. That's it. So you would go into a class of martial arts, you would sweat your ass off for years in order to get a black belt, earn your stuff, right? And move forward. You had small level competition. It was pretty much the format of a Olympic sports, except you start as an adult instead of starting as a kid, but same format, right? On the training side, you have two sides. You have all the sports you can compete in, and you got training at the global gym on the other, right? Even training at the global gym, the idea was bodybuilding, but just a lesser version, just so you look good naked. So those were really the thing. In bodybuilding and everything, you did it either on your own or you did it with a private trainer. Most people just wanted to look a little bit better, so they started to downgrade the requirements of bodybuilding, created machines because it was easier to use, so less and less effort spent. And really, the industry at first was like, how can people get the most results for the least amount of effort?
Yeah.
So that started to cultivate a culture of laziness, let's be honest. Right? Then supplements come in because that's easier to sell, and then you don't have to do as much work. And so a culture of laziness really in global gym started to develop, where it wasn't about performance, it was doing the least for the maximum results. Right? And of course, you start to get less and less results because you're putting so little work. So you have to do more tricks, more steroids, more supplements, more fat burners, more this, more that, because at the end, you're just not working hard enough. And the excuse is we have to be careful of overtraining. Nah, you're just lazy. And that was a culture before CrossFit. Was
Really?
a culture? Yes. It's because you were not there, but trust me.
No, I was really not there.
Back then, if we look, so CrossFit arrives, it's been around since I think he said the 70s, but for the 90s. But he really arrived in the 2000, in the late 2000, like first CrossFit game, 207.
Yeah.
So he will arrive that. Jiu-Jitsu really arrived on the world at the UFC, so 96 is when it really starts to explode. So Jiu-Jitsu is going to transform martial arts because, for example, the martial arts schools like Taekwondo or whatever, because they never competed against each other, they had their own competition. They all claim to be the best. And then the UFC comes about and everybody gets rocked. So you have two things to that. You have movies that tell you that Bruce Lee is the king, right? And you don't see a boxer, you don't see a kickboxer because that's boring. What you want to do is spinning kicks, and we all think it works. Then the UFC comes about, and we all go, what the fuck just happened? Right, type of thing. And so CrossFit, in a way, was the same. Is they come in, and Classman is like, fuck all of you. I'm going to bring intensity with high volume. So the opposite of the overtraining stuff. If we're going to sometimes work the same body part twice in a row, 2 days in a row. People were like, well, that's a sin. You can't say that. Like, how dare you say something like that? What about recovery? What about overtraining? It's like you're going to burn the muscle. You're going to
give you a rep though and you suck it up.
That yes, but that's another problem. It's like you're not going to be able to develop your biceps properly if you train them twice a week max. Overtraining, like, again, that mentality of laziness is let's do the least amount of work.
Yeah.
That was really the culture of global gyms. So the problem with that is that's where, as athletes and coaches, where that culture starts to develop in the gym. So you train like shit. And then all the bodybuilders keep saying you have to stretch and contract the muscle, which is true, but you're pro bodybuilders. The only thing you're doing is looking good on stage. Most of us that train with real sports, that's like that slow lifting where you just pump the muscle. Yeah, it's okay if that's all you do, but it's not functional in any way, right? So that creates a problem because the bodybuilders keep telling you to lift slow. The problem on the other side is he set up the expectations of people to go, I'm going to do the least amount of work. So every single time you push the intensity, they go, can we do this in an easier way? I just want the results. I don't want the work. I just want the results. And people tell you that. And so the problem is this is really not how this is going to be solved. And so they have bad food around and then people keep telling them that more food is better. You can have the carbs. Don't worry about the sugar, all that stuff. And on the other side, they have a culture of laziness that tell them like you should do less. Train smarter, not harder. You don't have to push hard. You just have to be smart about it. And that's what is being pushed continuously. You know why? Because that sells better. Because it's selling ice cream. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the culture CrossFit gets into and destroys it completely. Saying we're going to do legs every day. We're going to do pull-ups all the time, keeping pull-ups on top of it because it's faster. Basically, he took a hammer and just hit everybody at the knees on every single subject he could come up with. And he's right most of the time because the results on the women are amazing. One of the key, I think, with all this was, I think, the two really genius part of what he did was first the measuring stick, which was there was none of that in the global gym. Even machines, like how you going to gauge the weight on a machine? All machines are different. If you incline the high squat, you know what I mean? Like it's just complete bullshit. Right? There's no measuring in a global gym, not really, unless you do free weights all the time. But even that, you do 15 reps anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was none of that, and intensity was the second part. Glassman came in and go like, all right, we're going to train as intensely as we can. Fuck it, recovery, all of that, not true. We're just going to keep pushing. So those were really, and I think it works so well because those were the two things that were lacking the most at the gym. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And so that created a seismic event that changed fitness forever with CrossFit. Now, so there was a greatness. Now, a lot of things got overlooked because of the success of CrossFit. But I think it was successful from those two things. Yeah, like the train once a week. It overcame the laziness. We all started to honestly we swam in those waters way too much. The waters of laziness with that overtraining talk and everything, and a lot of it was bullshit.
Yeah.
It was just self-indulgence. We were self-indulgence our own way. He comes in and wrecks that. And it works. For women mostly. Like, it didn't men that strong, but women were getting stronger, fitter, more muscle than the fitness models carried. So everybody was like, whatever it is, that's working. Yes, intensity at a certain volume works, especially for women, but there are downsides to that. First of all, eventually the overtraining, we can overcome that by being smarter. That's true. But on the nervous system, that wasn't true. You can't just push like that continuously. Or if you push like that and you stay within that below 20 minutes, most workout below 12, not 5 times a day, and not the heavy hero workouts of 30 minutes, high intensity, high weights and everything. At some point, we got back to, okay, that's overtraining. Like you're just killing your nervous system when you do that. So women can take it because we push incentives on them that allow them to endure a certain amount of pain until anxiety got too much and just wreck their brain.
Yeah.
So that was a downside always that CrossFit was going to bring because there was no control to the system. They didn't stick with the original workout. They started to put more of the hero workout, longer workout and everything. So the reason that happened is because there is that fuck you toughness culture instead of laziness that did so well, and that army stuff, you're getting to Afghanistan tomorrow. But you put that and then the issue come in where now CrossFit is getting much bigger and everybody's jumping in that pot.
Yeah.
So now you have people completely unprepared for true CrossFit. So now you're getting the soccer moms, you're getting the fake athletes, those dudes that wear the global gym, that wear the nice shoes and the shorts, but never did a competitive sports in their life, who want to pretend they're better than the people at the gym because they used to get bullied at the local global gym because they're so weak. And now they can pretend that they're better. That's early CrossFit. Where and I understand why they didn't need an enemy at CrossFit, but right away, their enemy with Dave Castro was the global gym. And they used to trash people in global gyms all the time on the .com. And that was a culture people forget because they were not there at the beginning of CrossFit. But I was. And I was opposed to that from the beginning. If you see my earlier talks, I was like, stop trashing global gyms. There's plenty of very good people that train there. Yes, they have their own issues, don't get me wrong. And the laziness is one of them. And the machine is another. And outside of looking good, they're not training for anything good. So thank God for functional fitness. But there was no reason to attack them the way they did. Remember, my warm-up is your workout?
Well, I don't remember because I was like 5 years old.
No, but like you had a bit more. Because
no, I'm just
you were
joking.
like, when it really started to hit the fan, you were about 10, I think.
Yeah.
But they had a T-shirt that say, "My warm-up
No, you
is your
told me
workout."
about it. Yeah.
It was for people in Global Gym. So now you're taking all those people from the Global Gym. You say, "Come to CrossFit."
Yeah.
So now you have all those people that are awfully unprepared for what's coming, put into a a culture of intensity, toughness, suck it up, be tougher. So the first thing those people do, they go like, "Oh, I don't want that. I'm coming from a place where I wanted to do less. So now you're making me do more," but after a while, and so they start pushing toward longer workouts. Not because they're cooler, it's because they don't have to push as hard.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to do Helen anymore.
Yeah.
No one wants to run 400 meters. It's hard and you don't feel like you've done much. And so there is that culture from over there where also they're doing it because they're in cubicles all day, because they don't like their life or whatever. So at least for an hour, they get to exert themselves physically, which is very necessary because they don't do anything the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Physical, right? So they come into CrossFit and, no, I don't want to do a 12-minute workout. Because then that's the only thing I do all day. And on top of it, it's super intense and it hurts like hell. No, I want to do 45 minutes. So I feel I've done something. I exerted myself. I'm sweating a lot. And at least I moved for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they go first thing in the morning. They do their 1 hour of movement. That way, they feel they're cool for the day. They don't have to move anymore. Now they sit in an office and just type.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with that is now you change completely the culture of CrossFit and what CrossFit was, why it was good.
Yeah, because it was also like go outside, do sports, like eat a certain way.
But even
like
that, it was
methodology.
it was intensity.
Yeah. No, but I mean outside of the gym work, even
right,
like
but even
the whole thing.
like the first thing they used to say is intensity over form, which I disagree with completely. But they used to say that. Yeah, you have to die. Greg Glassman said it. The idea of a CrossFit workout is that you cannot finish it. Is that Grace? You have a heart attack at rep 29. That was always the point. Yeah,
intensity over form.
intensity over form. It was said many times.
That
was one of my grips at the time because people were getting wrecked left and
Yeah,
right.
no, I can
Because
imagine.
you put non-athletes into that. Oh God, that was
Go to Olympic weightlifting for reps and then
with
No,
intensity
and-
over form, and I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my god! It's good that I was not there in that time.
Yeah, exactly, because you would have broken yourself
100%.
left and right. But in the meantime, it worked.
Yeah.
So we push that way.
100%.
But so now we're facing the other problem, the financial incentivization that came with the success of CrossFit. Because, okay, so to go back to Jiu-Jitsu and global gyms, you were a personal trainer at a gym before. So you make somewhat decent money, but really not that much, right? Like the fitness industry has never been good for that. You're a teacher at a Jiu-Jitsu, at a taekwondo place or whatever, and if you're good enough as a good black belt, you open your own school. But this shit will take 15 years. You have to go white belt and then all the way up and then you're black belt and you do that shit for 10 years and then eventually you open your school because you're retired from... Like, that stuff takes forever.
It's a lifetime, really.
Yeah, that's what martial arts were.
yeah, exactly.
It's mastery of a craft, and like all crafts, it's a lifetime. Right, so you have that. And so was training. It's like the dude has been doing this for 15 years, personal trainer. You have to know your local community. You have to build your name in the gym, and then half of them are soccer moms. Some people want to look a bit better. So you're a fixture of your community, right? You're the guy who's been there fucking 20 years, who knows the ins and outs, how to eat, like all that stuff, right? So all that stuff takes time, right? And you're, the only way you prove that is through the results of your clients and stuff like that. But those people, they started themselves from the bottom, building themselves up. That's anecdotal evidence, right? Then we have rationalization, which means now you've been doing the stuff for 10 years, you start to know your craft, you're like, all right, how does this work? And you start to lay down a flat out idea through logical stuff of how the shit works.
That's actually where, in my opinion, the fun starts.
And where I think the most,
As
I'm
an
a
athlete,
rationalist, so obviously I think where
coach,
everything is logical evidence. And then you start to prove through your clients that your ideas work because you start to see the results.
Yeah.
You measure body fat or strength or whatever, right? So if you see that evolution of a craft of a coach normally is anecdotal, to logical to empirical.
Yeah.
And then you end up 20 years later, you're good at what you do, and then we keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Right. Here comes CrossFit that changes all the rules on how we train. And on top of it, they come and they say, you're going to do one weekend seminar, you can open your gym tomorrow. So not you're going to work as a trainer somewhere. Not like you're going to have to spend the next 8 years getting your black belt. You do, for the time, I think $1,000, a weekend seminar, Saturday, Sunday, and by Sunday night, you have basically a black belt that allows you to open a gym. The old school people will go like, oh, that's not true. There was level 2, level 3, level 4. Yes, but you could use the name CrossFit. You were not certified because they never certified people for CrossFit. But you could use the name CrossFit for your gyms. At a time where, and people forget, you open a gym, you get 100 members at $200 a month. That's, at first in LA, it was like that. Of course, it didn't last long, but that's how it started, right? After a weekend seminar. So they all like, wait, I don't have to wait 10 years. I can actually make good money. And more importantly, I can have my own gym, which all trainers want. Because they don't understand how much it sucks to have your own gym. That's why. You're all mistaken to... That's your dream, you're mistaken. Let me tell you about that. It doesn't sound nearly as good as you think it is. Because to be a good gym owner, it's not about being a coach. It's something else. And that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole different podcast for you right there. Anyway, the point of that was like, you now have a financial incentive to just take people that are not necessarily, do not come from a sports background, competitive sports, or a strength and conditioning background. They have no really, they almost have zero anecdotal background in that sense, right? So they go, yeah, I love CrossFit. I've been doing it for, some people have been doing it for months at my L1. And some of them wanted to open gyms when they went back home. Yeah, so it was, and that was not an isolated story either, no matter what people will say. Anyway, so a lot of people just, did 6 months at their own affiliate. So the thing blew up, like, hey, I can open my own, do an L1, open their own, and then off we go. And that story at the beginning was left and right. So you basically skipped the entire anecdotal part where you have to build yourself up into a black belt before you can start to do. Then after that, the logical part is being skipped too because you don't have the background to understand, to establish the hypothesis. So all you're doing now is the empirical, the testing. So what you do with that is you look at what CrossFit is giving you. CrossFit is giving you the fake empirical data by saying, oh, look at all those people I changed, look at the CrossFit Games, people are doing better. It's like, yes, they're doing better. That does not mean you're doing better.
Yeah.
They are. So you're looking at CrossFit HQ for two things. Empirical data, so you can prove that what you do is correct. So you're doing CrossFit. It doesn't matter, you're not doing their CrossFit. So you see how they're playing with words right now?
Yeah.
I'm doing CrossFit too. No, you're not. You're not doing their CrossFit, you're doing your CrossFit, because one of the bright things they did with CrossFit is we're going to put CrossFit in your gym and you do whatever you want. But we're going to call it CrossFit. Even though you can do shake weight, like, that stuff you used to shake like this, it actually existed.
I don't know what
Oh
this
my
is.
God, you missed the best part of the fitness industry. Like the 2000s were glorious.
I was busy in the doll corner,
that's
playing with.
If you never play with a shake weight, that's on you. Like, that's your problem.
With
Old
Legos and
school will know exactly what I'm referring to. The shake weight was amazing.
You need to show me.
The commercials. There were two commercials. One was the shake weight, and another one was a guy who actually was made as a joke, but it was so well made, he ended up being an infomercial, and the guy sold the product.
Jesus.
It was a pump like this, where you pump, or if
You need to show me.
I don't know if I can still find it. If you're on YouTube, please, and you're on old school, you know what I'm referring to, please find me the commercial and put it in the comments. It's a guy who comes up with a pump right here, and he's pushing and pulling like that, and he's doing all the exercise like that as a fucking joke on the fitness industry.
Oh, like a bit like that movie we watched. How's the name again? With
No, don't worry about it. Can you not cut my story while I'm in the middle of it? I'm doing a bit, and you're just cutting it flat, and on top of it, you go, oh, it's a bit like, I don't remember. Let's say I don't remember, and let's look for what I was talking.
Go.
Yeah,
Go
my point exactly, right. you're Miss Asperger right there. Like you can't tell stories. Do you understand? You're so autistic. Anyway, that's another problem. So there was that commercial where the guy, and I'm not kidding, is pumping something like this. He's doing all the workouts in different positions, but he did it with such a high production value that people thought it was real and start asking where they could buy the thing to the point where he actually sold the product.
That's hilarious.
That was and honestly, the shake weight wasn't far off. When I saw the shake weight, I thought it was also a parody. It wasn't. It was a weight. It was like a dumbbell, and you shake on both sides. So you did like this,
like an actual shaker, like how you shake
and then
shaker.
you would move inside, and so you had women going like this on infomercials and everything. I kid you
No.
not. Oh yes, shake weight. That one we can find. Oh yeah, look at the shake weight. Like they're literally going. Ah! Oh yeah, the shake weight was amazing. Yeah. Anyway.
What the hell?
Oh yeah.
And what was it like? To
was
train your
infomercials.
arms or something like that?
Yeah, to do everything because he had like different positions and shit. Yeah. No, it was glorious. But that's the time of infomercials, which you missed as well. Like they were grandiose things during the era of infomercials. You had no fun. If you didn't grow up in the 80s, 90s, you missed all the fun.
I know.
Between action movies. Anyway.
No, but that movie you watched that was like a kind of a parody on the gym culture with
the Global Gym.
The same guy.
Average
from
Joe.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Is it the same vibe?
Oh no, it was worse.
Oh my god.
No. The production value was. He tried to make fun of that, but then it was even like I'll try to find it. This was a little bit like Average Joe versus Global Gym. Dodgeball is the name of the movie.
Dodgeball. It was from the same guy from Tropic Thunder, right? Like the same...
Yeah. But that's why he made that, is because honestly the infomercial looked like that back
Damn.
then. Yeah, and he wasn't exaggerating either. That's why it made me laugh so much. But anyway, Dodgeball is one of the most underrated movies of all time.
Dodgeball is a good movie.
So
it's funny.
CrossFit comes in and allows you to skip all the work and just open your own gym and everything. What they give you in exchange is what the collection of CrossFit journal that they have, where very smart people talk, write things, right? But the problem with that is what they gave you were talking points, right, and data that have nothing to do with your programming.
Yeah.
So it allowed people to hide the fact that they were not competent enough to have a go at what they were doing.
So I want to push back on that a little bit. Can I like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So,
please.
Like, I think that when I entered the strength and conditioning world coming from an Olympic sport, I was surprised with the positivity they had, like how they really wanted to help people. Yep. And it really started to make me think of like, what is more important in a coach? Is it the intent or what you want for your people, or is it your your knowledge? Like I had 4 coaches in my sprinting days, and the second coach I went to for knowledge. He was not a good coach on an aspect of like a personal touch. But, for example, we trained under his strength program. His strength program was snatches, deadlift, and finishing with bench press. And then we would do jumps. That was the strength program. So
he did not have knowledge.
Exactly. And that was one of the highest coaches at the time.
Right, but that's another problem.
Yeah,
no, because, okay, your hypothesis is good intentions is more important than knowledge.
No, that's not per se what I mean. But what I'm saying is that at least what the CrossFit space created was a mixture of a basic level of understanding of movement. Right. And it kind of filtered out what people wanted out of...
Let me put it this way. Imagine you go into a martial arts seminar, right? And the whole weekend they show you how to punch someone. They show you Bruce Lee movies, right? Then they make you do 2 rounds where you punch and stuff like that. But they have really good intention. For example, they want to help women avoid dangerous situation, because you see it all the time.
Yeah.
And then they have a guy holding you, and then they're going to show you how to escape the hold, how to punch him and run away and everything, how to defend yourself against a much larger man all weekend by doing a lot of talk, explaining what the process is, and 2 or 3 complete bullshit situations where they pretend you can beat up a man. Mm-hmm. Right? But their intention is to help women. Right? and they charge about $1,000 per person for the weekend. At the end of that, they say, now you can go and defend yourself in the street, and if you want, teach it to other women. Is the good intention enough in that case that once you face the real world, the real consequences are going to hit you really hard? So now, do I think that good heart, and by the way, I agree with you entirely that CrossFit coaches are the people that care the most that I've ever met. I agree completely. Is that enough when you have people health in your hands? No. Do I think it is the foundation of coaching? Yes. 100%. I believe that if you do not care, if your heart is not in helping people, if you're doing it for the money or whatever, you're in the wrong field. It should come from the heart. I agree with you completely. Is that enough? No.
No, I don't think it's enough. But what I tried to say is that there is a deep level of incompetence, generally speaking, in humans who don't take their job seriously. I think it's more of an issue.
I would agree with that.
I think that's the first issue. I think
I would agree with that. Yeah.
There's incompetence in every sport. Like in sprinting, the level of coaches I had, the incompetence I saw there was striking compared to the average CrossFit affiliate I would walk to even here in South America with a level 1. Like, I think incompetence is really the issue. And after that, I think at least what CrossFit did breed was, let's create healthier people. Where I think in Olympic sports it's so based on performance that health is really on place 5.
Let me ask you, how many of the coaches you had were former sprinters?
2 out of the 4.
2 out of the 4, right. So, were they high-level sprinters?
No, not as high as the athletes they coached.
So, what was their mid-level, as in what?
They were like, okay, they
competed a little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
Right. So they had some anecdotal part on that. Did they went through then the study of how to, there was strength and conditioning background?
Yeah. They had like universal level of like movement science.
Oh,
shit
in Holland.
like that, yeah.
Right. But that's knowledge from the 60s. I know because I looked at it. Right. So fundamentally, they never got that logical thinking type of thing and everything. So what we're talking about is that formation matters. Now, so what we're saying is that the background on the personal level, they have to come with the right values from the sport itself as well.
Yeah.
So that's important. After that, I would agree that there is that logical thinking part, right? That's where the formation of the coach comes in. So in the Olympic sport like sprinting, in Holland, they're stuck in shit from the 60s. And in CrossFit, they just told people, you go do it on your own.
Yeah. I mean,
I think both sides are
a little extreme.
Right. Now, do I think, again, CrossFitters come from the best mental place? Yes, I do, actually. I do. So would I trust a CrossFit coach to train an athlete more than your sprint coach? Yes, because of that. Now, I have seen, being within the world of CrossFit, that a vast majority DDL1 started to study like Olympic weightlifting, but not really, and turned toward the beginning of YouTube and social media to get the information they needed. Now, do I think the most majority came from the right place? Yes, I think most of them actually in CrossFit, 99% of them came from the right place, because all the coaches I met, they came for me, it's a bit different. Maybe I have a bias, but I think a lot of them, I'm not done. A lot of them came from the right place. Now, CrossFit left it on people as a libertarian idea to educate themselves. And people try to do that. But then here comes the problem with social media, YouTube and everything. It's like from the beginning, you made money through clicks, you made money through sponsors and stuff like that. So that means that you had to promote something that was clickbait worthy, that was incentivized, not education, but entertainment from the beginning. So stuff like that. So people went at people, but then on the other side, the problem with that is all information was for free always. So your sprint coach got his information from the 60s. Most of them were wrong. But at least he had to sweat for it. He had to go to the university. He had to prove that he wanted it. The problem with what CrossFit say, do it on your own, is it allowed people to do it or not. And again, normal, it's a libertarian idea. But the problem with that is it never incentivized hard work, personal responsibility, accountability, most important of all. Like, where is the accountability in the CrossFit system toward your own education? By the way, those are all my people. I mean, they all came to see me, so that means they held themselves accountable to their own education, which is why I love my people, because from the beginning, they were like, you're right, it's on me to educate myself. And you all made a jump toward that. But you also live in a world that does not promote personal responsibility anymore. The world then is not the world now. Yeah. The world when CrossFit went up, so 2005 and up, until, let's say, 2014, right? The world then is not the world now in 2024. Then there was a sense of personal responsibility and accountability toward furthering your education. Glassman was still there, in charge, leading CrossFit a certain way. The world, not just CrossFit, the world is different now, where there is no push toward accountability anymore. On the contrary, accountability is a far-right, patriarchal idea. So now that you remove that part, where do you think CrossFit is going?
Yeah. No, and I think your point is very good, as of like, at least there's, like, I think sweating for something is very, very important, because it shows your commitment to what it is that you want to do. It's asking you that question, do you really want that? Like, is it worth the time and effort? And I think there's a great value in that. From my experience, my first coach he had really barely any, like, the most basic education, but as a coach, he was amazing. After that, I switched to the complete opposite, where as a coach, they were not as good, but the knowledge was very, very good. But over time, I think both I benefited from the most of a lot, but the most would be a combination from a little bit of both.
No, and I agree.
I think the human part is equally important as the knowledge part in that sense. And I think that's when I quit sprinting, and actually when I got really familiar with all the principles you teach, then that's the moment where I was actually able to use all the knowledge I gained over the 10 years of sprinting, because then there was a format. So I really understand that people who are having an affiliate or having done CrossFit, and they come here and there's a format of, okay, this is how am I supposed to apply it in a way where it's balanced from both sides, like it depends type of thing.
And I agree with you with all this, but there's another problem with that view. Another problem, let me present you a different view on that. I agree with you when it happened to you, and I agree with you, for example, for the first 10 years of CrossFit, let's say 2005 to 2015. But my comparison of CrossFit versus Olympic sport is that Olympic sport will be there in 20 years.
That's very
Will CrossFit be there? You know why? Because at least, do they suck on the strength and conditioning part for sprinting in Holland? Amazingly so.
It's crazy.
They suck. You guys have no idea.
Honestly, I would love to.
I was at the Gymnastic Olympic Center. They have no fucking clue.
I would really like someday to do a podcast on that, just because it's honestly to a degree it's funny. Like, if you know a little bit of strength and conditioning, if you look at Olympic sports strength programs or but strength programs, it's comical.
No, it's crazy. But okay, but the good part about that is it makes people do it. It forces. If you don't want it, you'll quit.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's also on the athlete part, though.
No, okay. Again, different conversation. Let me just finish what I'm talking about. No matter if you don't want it, you quit, because that's a very boring part, and you have to do all the research and all that stuff. On the other side, with that culture that we see in today's world, where it's like everything has to be entertaining, everything has to be, I say entertaining, it has to be distracting, really, but let's be nice and let's call it entertaining, where you get to pick and choose the knowledge and everything. We are going back to that easy route. Knowledge now has to be easy, not hard, and all of that, which means because it has to be absorbed by the maximum amount of people at the lowest cost. So now we're going back to that same mentality of before, of how can I do less work for the most results. So we are going back to, we are lazy when it comes to learning now, because we're bombarded by information and it's free everywhere, and you get it in an entertaining format. They want look at YouTube, they want high production value now, people. They don't look at podcasts if it's not like they don't have the thumbnail and then the guests, everything has to be entertaining, high production value, easy to absorb with the least amount of work. And you have the thumbnail, but you also have that minute 15, I do this, minute 17, so that you can just go like, like a how-to video. Everything is a how-to video with high production value. Right. So that means that you don't have to do any work, you just listen. And guess what happens with all of that? People don't. I talked about lactate. I talked about all that stuff. How many people, even of my people, remember the lactate stuff? None of them. How many guys are still doing lactate testing? 1%. We have 1,000 views. Right? That means 10 of them right now are doing lactate testing. Right. The UCLA study that we're doing, by the way, we just filed this morning for the UCLA stuff. So it's officially an invention. So that's a new therapy. It's first as an invention. Anyway, so the idea with the therapy is we will give a basic assessment to psychiatrists. You know what that basic assessment is going to be based on outside of the measuring? It's going to be the Q-1 and the cyclical squats.
Yeah, the two things people don't give a fuck about. Yeah.
That I keep talking about.
Yeah, it's true.
I keep saying Q-1, cyclical squat, stuff like that. You know what the after that, when they go to the face, when they make them do workout, it'll be rope pulls, sled drag, sled sprint. Right? It's going to be 10 movements. Intensity, like, by the way, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Yeah. You know what people got? Emotional mapping, Disney December.
Yeah.
The two things I don't talk about anymore. You know why? Because it was one thing to use, and you guys took the easiest thing and just ran with it. You all became like, again, existentialist is necessary. The anecdotal experience is very important. Emotional mapping, the point was not to get you stuck as an existentialist. You also have to be a rationalist, and you also have to go toward the data part. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and
it's all three. You're supposed to start as an existentialist, then you move as a rationalist for the second part of the problem, and the third part is being a imperialist. Imperialist, sorry. Empiricist. Imperialist that's me being a patriarch. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry, I didn't know what either of those
don't
mean.
worry about it. Imperialist means you're part
I
of
was
the
making
empire.
a joke.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Joke.
Yeah, exactly. So my issue with the way CrossFit did it is that it could work at that time with Greg Glassman at the helm, because he was a libertarian, but he also drove a sense of accountability on everybody using the CrossFit Games to do that, right? Yeah. But the financial incentives push people to give everybody the 30 to 40 minute workout because that's what people wanted. But then you know what happens next? Highworks come in, and they're creating a structure for the 30-minute, 40-minute workout that CrossFit refused to do at the beginning. So they're just going to franchise Highworks boxes with their workouts because it's always the same, because that's what people want. So the whole we're going to give people what they want is never sustainable. Because you know what people will do? The least amount of work for the max amount of results, to the point where they get lazy. Should you work smarter, not harder? Yes, I agree. But be careful. At some point, you will become lazy. And that's what CrossFit was fixing. And look at Hyrox. Most people do Hyrox because it's not as hard as CrossFit.
Yeah.
How many times did you see people doing 5 sets of row pull and then tagging me on it? If you do 5 sets of row pull, you haven't done one. Let me tell you. Because you should not make it to 5. And no, it's not being in shape or not. It's nothing to do. You're just not pushing hard enough. Because that's the culture. Because there are incentives toward not pushing that hard. See what I mean? So that my problem with CrossFit right now is like CrossFit HQ, the way it is right now, not the 2010 format. The 2024 format is not sustainable. It will crash. CrossFit will stay, but not as CrossFit. It'll be like Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu with the gi, not doing stand-up, not doing anything else, was never sustainable. At some point, people were going to go like, okay, and there would be too many of them to sustain. And then the UFC, Royce Gracie was never going to keep winning. Because people will learn jiu-jitsu, but then they also know wrestling and they also know boxing and kickboxing. So they'll wreck you standing up. They'll just won't go on the ground and then they'll kill you. And that's what happened. And so that changed jiu-jitsu. CrossFit is gonna, yes, you got rid of Glassman, awesome. But now that you have HQ, that is a corporation, where do you think that corporation is gonna go? They're trying to get to 30,000 just so they can sell. So it's gonna be sold and resold and resold and resold. Like already HQ today is not what HQ used to be. So yeah, like that dude is gonna go like, how dare you talk about CrossFit like that? It's not the same CrossFit. CrossFit from 2010 when Glassman was there is dead. Now it's a new CrossFit with a corporation at the head, and they only have one idea in mind, is money. So what they're gonna do is the least amount of work on there, promise that they're gonna get more affiliate, try to bait people into affiliation so that they can sell it. In the meantime, they're gonna have to promote the same lazy culture because no one wants to hear about intensity because it's hard, right? It's like no one wants to hear about education because it's hard, most people. And so that part is non-sustainable. Whereas the Olympic sport is still gonna be there because at least they have a structure. Do they do the things the wrong way in many places? Yes, obviously, right? So some of your coaches were awful. That's why we can do better, which is why I started training you so that we could fix the hammy. We can do better. And by the way, what you're saying about the coaches, I bitch about physios all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're kind of the same crowd.
Yeah,
I just, for me, like, I have
but imagine the world without physios.
True.
It'd be worse.
It's a very good point.
I bitch about physios all the time, but let's be honest, without them, the world would be a lot worse. And no one would train because they, at least as bad as, and yes, sorry, I'm bashing physios again, as not all of you, some of you I love, most of you I don't. As bad as they are, at least they make the thing move forward because there's a structure to it.
Yeah.
And at least they have a level of education that is better than most of the global gym people. Now, do they have a fucking ego and think they're better than trainers when they're not? Because outside of their limited education, most of them don't know shit. That's true as well. But at least they're moving the needle forward.
True. I mean,
what they do is sustainable. Is it a scam half the time? Yes. But at least it's sustainable. Their lower back stuff is bullshit. Anyway, that's a
so yeah, I mean, for me, I got introduced to the strength and conditioning world through you. So of course, I have a very different view than the real, maybe more like rational view of it, because I only met very good strength and conditioning coaches with a very good heart for it. But the truth is also is that as shitty as some of them, my sprint coaches were, I'm very happy they pulled me off of my school at the time and took me to the track and also pushed me, because I think what they taught me was a toughness of basically we're not gonna give you motivation. If you want it, then here we have they had to go get it, which I still think is a better approach than constantly cuddling your athletes all the time. Because I on the other side think that sometimes right now it's like, and maybe that's a little bit rude to say, but you know how we are like cookie cuttering everything for our athletes in the strength and conditioning world. I disagree with. I do not think that kindness is always a gift. I think you should sometimes, and I mean
kindness or weakness.
I think it's weakness, because you need there needs to be certain people in your life, and I think your trainer, or as if you are a coach of someone, is one of them that needs to tell you the truth, just like maybe your partner or your mom or whatever. But I think your trainer is someone who needs to tell you the truth, and that's something that they do in Olympic sports. Is they tell you like, you suck. I remember one of my first a moment that was very stuck with me to this day, that I find one of the most amazing things, is when I was 15, there was a coach that came to me and told me, listen, you are a strength athlete and you're good now because you're strong, but you're not going to make it. And I was like, oh, cool. Thank you.
How dare you,
No, awesome. Because that made me want to learn technique. And after that moment, I started to learn my technique. And that actually got me to the next level. I still sucked, and I still didn't make an Olympic level, obviously, because I didn't have the talent. But without that coach telling me, you suck and you rely on strength.
He also told you you would never make it, and
he was
because you didn't have the talent. Yeah,
he was right. But without him telling me that, I would still be in the sprint world. I would never switch to powerlifting. Because 4 to 5 years after he told me that, I worked my ass off on technique to realize that it's not going to give me anything.
Yeah.
And I better switch to powerlifting while I still have my
Yes.
age on my side.
Talent,
Without him telling me that,
Yes.
I would be still in sprinting, losing my mind because I know I was not good enough. And I think that it's the same thing as telling an obese person, it's great, you're good the way you are. No, you're not. You need to change
to lose
because
weight.
you're going to die otherwise.
Yeah. And well, actually, you're going to die painfully. That's the problem. But
yes, and you don't need to be there.
That's to me is because we had the same thing with strongmen and everything. Then we're going back to in that sense data, right? Is to be able to that's the problem with functional fitness. Is that's why I think they love emotional mapping. Is they all went on the anecdotal, like everything is about the person, which is really the world we live in today with that fucking woke ideology. Everything is their truth about the person. It's like, no, not everything is your truth. Sometimes there is also truth.
Yeah.
And that's where the logical thinking and the empirical evidence comes in. What I liked about Olympic sport is that they went toward sometimes the objective base, obviously too much, but toward the empirical thing of can you make it or not? Now, the downside of that is they have no anecdotal stuff, which means they don't give a shit of you as a person. And if you don't make it, that's your problem. They will break 1,000 to make one. But there is a power in those Olympic sports that make them sustainable. And I think that is about the accountability level that they bring. Because if you don't have the talent, you don't belong in an Olympic center.
You don't.
So, for example, Olympic centers are not going to bring everybody in. They're going to bring only the top people. So the regional levels are going to bring regional level athletes. And your local high school is where everybody can go.
Yeah,
and that layer thing, that structure makes it sustainable, which I think we need in functional fitness.
Yeah, and what I think fundamentally that coach gave me is an opportunity to push myself. He said, this is the reality.
And to find what you're good at.
Yeah, you choose which side you're going. Do you want to see where you can take it, which I chose to do at that moment. But I also, because he said that, realized at 20 that this is not my path. I'm not good enough.
Exactly.
And I think, honestly, that's in a way what you, in a similar way, offer to people on the sled. It's like, hey, I'm going to tell you when you're not pushing, but it's up to you if you want to really change yourself and push past that moment to find out what's on the other side.
And I think, in a way, what they're doing with CrossFit is a very dangerous thing for women, because the world right now is telling women you can be everything you want, which is not true. You can be anything you want if you have talent, but you cannot be everything. No one can. Yet we're telling women, oh, you can do this. And so women will push themselves to oblivion, as usual, will endure into oblivion, trying to be every single thing. In Olympic, no one in Olympic sport will tell you can be everything you want. It's like, no, you choose one sport and we're going to see if you have the talent or not, because trust me, you can do both, right? And you have very, very rarely multiple, even the athletes are not at the level of, So this is what I like about that mentality of Olympic sports. Yes, objective based way too much, but at least there's an accountability when it comes to, look, if you have a talent, you can do one thing, but the whole, like, you can do 10 different things and be good at all 10 is some woke bullshit that honestly is harming people, and especially women, because they're too agreeable, and putting them in a bin. Because then they go, like, the second they get good at something, they go, well, what about this? What about this? What about that? What about the other one? And then anxiety gets out of control. So there is a power in those Olympic sports in the sense of the structure that they provide that leads to accountability on the part of the athletes, where they need to know where they suck, and so that they can find their own path. If you don't have a structure to tell people where they suck, this is where we end up, in a non-systemal place where everybody is a champion. That means no one is. That's dangerous.
I do really agree with that.
I think it's dangerous.
I think also it's easier to go from an Olympic sports to the strength and conditioning world, because if you go from the base you create in kids in a strength and conditioning world to go into an Olympic sport is impossible, but the other way around is possible. If you come from you can be everything, you're great the way you are, even in a CrossFit structure as a child athlete, if you go into an Olympic sport, it's going to be a really rude awakening.
Yeah.
But the other way around is like a warm bath,
It's a get rich quick scheme in a way, all that, because it's saying, like, it's for example, CrossFit, I begin like, look, you get an L1, you open a gym, you get 100 members. That was true at the beginning. But that was only true for the first 1,000 gyms. Then it started to slow down. Like, the first 500 gyms in LA, that was true. But then as you get 1,000, and then as you get 10,000, that's not true anymore. So that means that those statements that put the house on fire are only true at the beginning. So it's like a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a Ponzi scheme where it works for the early people that are there, but the later in you come in, the worse the return.
Yeah.
So that's my problem with when we start pushing stuff like that. It's the same thing with steroids. Like, this only works if you're early. Imagine you have a pill that gives you three superpowers, but the same ones, right? But you get those superpowers. Or like the first 1,000 people taking the pill would be gods on earth.
Yeah.
But what happens when everybody has it? Then you know what would happen? People would ask for another superpower.
Yeah.
So we're back to selling the pill that gives you another. But because the point is not that you have something new. The point is that you have something the other doesn't.
Yeah.
And that was the base of CrossFit. We're going to give you what they don't have. That was the base of Jiu-Jitsu. We're going to give you what they don't have, the ground. But once everybody has the ground, then no one has the ground. So now you have to have kickboxing, and then wrestling, and then back to Jiu-Jitsu, back to kickboxing. And every single time the level is higher, higher, higher. So CrossFit was, you can deadlift, but you can't run. Yeah, you can run, but you can't deadlift. That was what CrossFit was giving you, what the other one doesn't have. And once you start bringing those lousy athletes, the typical global gym people, that now they don't just want to look better, they just want to be better. And then they start to go, you can deadlift, but you can't run like me and everything. You're breeding a culture of ego and laziness later on that is going to make it unsustainable.
Yeah, but do you think it also has to do with, completely correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like what CrossFit wanted to do is to create a movement of healthier people.
100%.
I think where Olympic sports, they're trying to find the best person. They don't really care about the average person and
That's
making
true.
it accessible. Because
that's very true.
For example, teaching coaching, and especially because I'm coaching sprinting to strength athletes right now, mostly, right? Or coming from a strength and conditioning background. Yeah. They have no idea what sprinting is. It is such an
very, very few people do.
It's not an accessible sport.
Very few people
and
do.
People don't know what it is. I think, for example, gymnastics became more accessible because of CrossFit, but it's still a very inaccessible sport, like pure gymnastics and sprinting.
This is not a criticism of CrossFit at all.
I just more think like the intent of both sports were very different.
Completely understand, but that's not my point. My point is financial incentives happen. We don't live in 2010, we live in 2024.
Yes.
The financial incentives of 2024 with a culture we are in, allied with all information being on YouTube, which makes it an entertainment, will kill CrossFit as presently built. That's what my point is. I don't want to see that happen. This is not a criticism of CrossFit. This is a warning. This is what I did on even on the podcast when I say it's not a training methodology. You're not understanding me. I'm not criticizing. This is a warning as to how we need to change things so that we can keep them sustainable. There has to be an evolution of CrossFit when we include High Rocks, then CrossFit, then let's say a Strongfit type shoulder, so that we can create a system that can move forward.
There needs to be
the financial incentives of today's world in 2024 with the YouTube thing that is only based on entertainment, not knowledge anymore. And the fact that CrossFit HQ is a corporation now that only has money in mind makes me worry about the future of CrossFit. Yeah. So this is not a criticism, this is a warning. We need to evolve we need to find a way to have an accountability of coaches and athletes.
Yeah.
And right now, I don't see it growing it the right way. I'd see it basically giving people what they want, not promoting education. What HQ is doing, they want more people in. We don't know how. We're just going to promote CrossFit. None of this is about the product itself, which is the training system. How do we make it better? There hasn't been an evolution of the system in a long, long time. So it's a CrossFit game. Again, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
And in 2024, I found that very dangerous because I think that trend is picking up speed. And I don't see as you said, for example, the Olympic sports, if they do one thing very well, is accountability. They tell you, you suck, you're going to have to get better if you want to move forward. We need some of that.
Yeah, so like welcoming high rocks, but even maybe welcoming other parts of maybe those Olympic sports, like of a sprinting, of a Olympic weightlifting, bring a bit of that toughness in, going
of that structure and accountability
and
in,
the testing,
and the test, yes, and the testing and accepting high rocks as part of the like that. Like they're starting to go CrossFit versus high rocks. They'll never win that. That's a mistake.
No, I don't think so.
That's a mistake. That's like you're killing yourself if you do that. Yeah, but we use barbell. That doesn't mean you're right. What if you're wrong? What if there's better thing than barbell? Yes, I know. Like, so again, like you're not. This is everybody's starting to clamp down in their thing. They're turning into a red versus blue type of thing. It's a mistake. High rocks is part of the functional fitness world. They're doing what CrossFit should not be doing, which is the lazy 40-minute workouts. CrossFit should remain what it is, and we need strength sports and everything, but we need to bring back the structure of Olympic sports and the toughness of it, of like, no, you suck. You don't have to be a world champion, that's okay. But in today's world, if you're obese, you look beautiful. No, you don't. If I say you look like Lizzo to a woman, she'll feel insulted.
Yeah.
And yet fat is beautiful. But if I say you look like Lizzo, that means you're beautiful, right? I don't think women would feel... So, the hypocrisy is crazy. We don't know what it... Like, you're not allowed to say true things anymore. It's crazy.
Yeah,
the problem with all that shit, and I understand work, and that's not my point. My point is, if we bring that into sports, we will kill that sport.
Yeah.
If we make CrossFit work, it's done. Because then you're not allowed to say that... you suck, you're not strong enough, it's going to be like everybody is great. If everybody is great, everybody's beautiful, then it's okay, let's take Ozempic and we don't need to train anymore. Anyway, try to bring fat is beautiful in an Olympic sport like sprinting, like 100 meters. All right, let's get a woman with 300 pounds and let's make her run 100 meters. And if she doesn't get a heart attack, then what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need to bring, things have to be measured, and we have to be able to say this is good, this is bad, this sucks. Just common sense. Yeah. We need to bring. So again, I'm not all for anecdotal evidence, but then logical and empirical. We need all three. Epistemology has 3 pillars. It's not 3 groups of people. It has 3 pillars: anecdotal, logical, empirical.
Yeah, I think we're just really in a stage of fitness where it's about how you feel during training, which I think fundamentally is just wrong.
No. Like, it has to be implemented, but let's be honest, it's not the most important part. How you feel when you train, I'm sorry, you know how you feel? Bad. Like all training sessions. You love the results, but the training sucks. It's true. It's fine also. It doesn't have to be anything but that.
Yeah, and I think that's where, for example, Strongfit had such a good place in maybe the more old school CrossFit because it was so tough and you had to bring balance.
Oh yeah, new school.
Exactly. But in new school, it really has to take a different shape because even what we did, for example, with the squat imam, with an exposure therapy, it's still, you still need to put weight on that bar. Yeah. And you still need to go for your max set of 3 once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever the structure is.
It's when I say farmers walk and they do 400 meters.
Yes.
I'm like, that's high rocks. You're not doing Strongfit. And no, it's not farmers walk. You're just carrying the groceries for 400 meters. Give me a break. Groceries probably hurt more because they're awkward than the fucking kettlebell.
It's literally true.
Because it's small, it hurts. It's harder to carry the groceries than what you're doing for high rocks. I met to some high-level high rocks, and oh my God. Anyway, that's not a farmer's walk. That's a different idea. We need all of it, but we also need to bring that idea that, some of the stuff sucks. It's necessary.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nature, maybe even only necessary. It's a nature of the beast. Mm-hmm. If we start to go only anecdotal, and again, that's my problem with emotional mapping, it becomes self-indulgence. Self-indulgence always turns to laziness, always. Understand the pillars of epistemology as a coach and as an athlete. If you cannot understand all 3 forms of evidence processes, the pillars, you will always end up in a fallacy. Fallacy of anecdotal evidence is always the same. Is you're close-minded to everything else, you will always turn into a lazy mindset.
Yeah,
You
and
need evidence, but you also need to understand the difference between correlation and causation.
yeah, and you can even argue what is more dangerous: training based on how you feel, or pushing yourself to a point with the risk of crushing yourself.
So, do
What
you want
is
anxiety or do you want depression?
I would prefer anxiety, but I'm biased.
Exactly. Right.
I think anxiety.
You need all three. You need to be balanced. There
is
is
at least a
no.
drive,
We should not.
you
No,
know?
we should not go into one direction only. That's my point.
Yeah,
It's
true.
a
You're
pillar.
right,
You need
you're
to be
right.
balanced. So you need all three. Yes, exactly.
Balance, whatever.
Yeah. My point.
Whatever. So boring. You almost sound woke with your balance stuff.
No, I'm not.
We all need to be balanced. Like,
Yeah. No, anxiety is much better. As you can tell, anxiety is much better. The results are much better.
no, I'm joking.
Anyway, that's enough of a rant. And then.
Did we go into a rant?
Oh yeah, that was.
Was it a
Well,
rant?
whatever. I just
I don't
want
think
to.
so.
I want to see the functional fitness succeeding. And it's a bit the follow-up on that podcast we did on the, training methodology versus training.
Oh yeah, that's true actually.
It's like, where are we going with all this? And also it's just promoting epistemology, which I think is not taught in school. Critical thinking is not taught anymore. That's a shame. But that's more like a cultural thing, like that woke thing that is happening right now.
Can you explain a bit more, like what you mean with that? Like, what you mean with like rational thinking is not taught anymore?
Well, look at universities. Look at the fundamental of the upper middle class, elite class is taught in universities first. Like all the elite or upper middle class lawyers, doctors, they all come from large universities. Large universities right now, if you look at everything is based on how it's felt, how things are felt, and not how things are. They actually have fired professors of critical thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think rational thinking, for me, it was a very foreign idea until, we started, training and everything.
I could tell.
I think it's a very freeing way of thinking, because you can, at some point, you need to eliminate a little bit of the bullshit, emotion, the fluff, and just look at what is happening right now, which is really difficult to do. It's a muscle, right?
The problem right now is philosophy used to be something you read and try to understand. Now, because of the format we are in, people don't read anymore. They get talking points for people, because what they're trying to do is win conversations. So they go on someone they like, that guy explains something, they memorize that and use it as talking points from when they have that conversation with someone they don't like, so that they can win the argument. That's what education is today, online. And unfortunately, in universities as well. It's learning talking points to win conversation against your enemies.
So what is a way to teach, but also to
Reading.
learn rational thinking? Oh.
It's the Greeks. That shit has been written 2,200 years ago. Read the Greeks, move on to the Stoic, to the Romans. Read the Greeks. Read philosophy.
Can anybody read
Greeks,
the Greeks,
Romans.
you think?
Anymore?
No, I mean, can the average person, like, can someone like me read the Greeks?
Yeah.
I mean, no, but
Socrates was...
because I'm asking because sometimes I think for people it seems so like, oh, like it's like reading the studies you post and everything. It seems
it's not the same.
No.
The problem is, if you want to be able to read the Greeks or the Romans or whatever, cut YouTube and everything for 2 weeks, so that your brain can slow down to the point where you can actually read a page, not at the speed you watch videos at. Reading is a lot slower than the stuff. We had a friend who brings her kid, 3-year-old girl. I'm putting Wall-E on that she's never seen. First of all, I called it a sin that she's never seen Wall-E. I was like, how is that possible? I put Wall-E on. She didn't last 5 minutes. You know why? Because he wasn't strolling. So he wasn't
she's
enough.
On TikTok. She's like
she's a 3.5-year-old.
Oh yes, 3.5. Yeah,
did not want to watch Wall-E.
Yeah.
Because you know what? She went back on the phone and kept strolling. So that kid is never gonna read the Greeks, because that speed of stimulation will not allow you to read. Even YouTube is too fast of you being completely bombarded with things to the point that you cannot slow down and read a page of a book anymore. Because you want to go faster, and reading, you need time to process the information. So reading is key to everything. So learn to read first. Then start with the Greeks and then move on to the Romans. Marcus Aurelius is not that hard. To Seneca, they're not that hard to. But Seneca, people know Seneca because they've seen some fucking bullet points on Instagram or some stuff on YouTube that again they use as talking points to talk about their grandpa or their uncle at the dinner table and shut them up. That's what people use philosophy for. Instead of studying, philosophy was to study for yourself. Marcus Aurelius, he didn't write a book, he wrote letters. His own journal that eventually got shown to people. Those were lessons of life. It was never supposed to be published. That's not why he wrote it. It was his own musings that he put on paper, and they reveal a way to lead your life that is fascinating. But it's not a bullet point thing like everything else people want to do today. You don't take paragraphs or pages of a book out of context. You could, when I grew up reading, you could even take a paragraph out of a book because it's like, well, that's out of context. Now forget. Now it's not even a page out of a paragraph. It's a line out of a page. Like, it's insane. No, you can't take lines out of a book and use it as talking points. Not out of context. You can't do that because that was never the purpose of the book. The book was there to teach you to think, not win an argument against an enemy. That was not the point. It was to teach you to move forward. That's why it matters to read. For you, not to win talking points. That's just lazy. It's something else. But this is what YouTube and all that stuff is. Everything is a distraction. Everything is entertainment. If philosophy is not entertaining, that's not the point. It's to teach you. So you read a book of philosophy, you don't tell a living soul. You integrate the stuff. You try to understand your version of it so that you can learn critical thinking that will lead you to being an empiricist. Because then you can look for data around where you were. But it's a 1, 2, 3. And at some point you realize the anecdotal part once you know yourself enough. Doesn't matter. It's logical thinking into testing. That's where the secret is. And once you develop critical thinking, testing is much easier because then you know what to test, which allows you to know the difference between correlation and causation, which is always the fallacy of the empiricists.
So what would be the first book you would say start?
Chronology is great. Start with Socrates, then move to Plato, then we go from there. I mean, there's a few Greeks, but I think Socrates, because you have to understand, he is the grandfather of philosophy, therefore of the Western world. So you need to understand his form of breaking down. He was the first debater, really, not the first, but the greatest debater, probably. Before he was a philosopher, he was really a debater. Plato started to, you don't even have to agree with Plato, because certain things in the Republic, and it doesn't matter. He will show you the thinking process toward critical thinking. There's a few authors, but I would just go Socrates, Plato, and move to maybe, I think you would enjoy Marcus Aurelius. Seneca is a Stoic, you might like that. I have a few Romans. I would go more toward the Romans because they absorbed the Greek and went more into philosophy than the Romans. The Greeks were really trying to explain the formation of civilization.
So would you, in a way, like, let's say you get 5 people that start brand new and they're going to be on your mentoring program to become a coach. Would you put this part as homework? I would put Socrates, Plato. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to read the whole Republic, but let's say Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca. Just so you have understanding where the Western world comes from. And I think Seneca and Marcus Aurelius will teach you. I think Marcus Aurelius and Seneca would be the best teachers for physical trainers because there is a truth in what they say that you will relate to as part of movement and strength. Interesting.
Seneca those are the Stoics. Seneca is a Stoic. You will relate. I think from a physical trainer perspective, in a way you will relate very much so to Seneca. So, what are if you would have to make like let's say a top 5, what would be besides no. Besides reading philosophy and Socrates, starting with Socrates, what would be other
points where you're like, this is essential to develop a strong base as a strength and conditioning coach, or a coach in general?
If we go past philosophy, honestly, be a student of the game. Paul Anderson wrote 3 books about his training system. Read that, because you'll be amazed to see how he trained. Don't get stuck in that idea that as society progresses, we get better. That's not always true. Technology speaking, we are more advanced, and we have better toys. We are better at societies? Not necessarily. It's not that simple. People train differently 60 years ago. That doesn't necessarily mean they were weaker. We have better drugs now. We have understanding. We have better equipment that allows for certain things. But if you look at some of the numbers of Paul Anderson, like you understand it comes down to people as much as anything. Anyway, read Paul Anderson. Be a student of the game. See how they train people in the 70s. So Tudor Bompa is the grandfather of periodization. I would read his book. Paul Anderson, and then you move on systems. And Louis Simmons, the conjugate system, you should read that. Stuff like that, just so that you understand the different forms. The 531 from Jim Wendler. Be a student of the game. Don't just Google it and everything. Just take the time to see how they thought about training, and you'll see that a lot of the patterns are common ones, and then they had different ideas. But you're going to see a lot of the same stuff coming back again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And that usually tells you something, by the way. Bill Starr, love Bill Starr. He wrote a bunch of stuff. Bill Starr was great. I'll go with it. So be a student of the game. Go by chronology. So Bill Starr before Louis Simmons. But so you would go. So Paul Anderson, Bill Starr, West Side, Jim Wendler.
So Socrates, be a student of the game. Are there other
things? No, like
things?
philosophy, no, because
philosophy.
there's so many
I'm saying Socrates because that's where you said you should start. But are there other things where you're like, that's very, very, very essential part to develop?
Well, if you train people, I think you should have a little bit of a background in psychology, so you understand people better. So go with Freud, and you don't have to go into psychiatry, but at least psychoanalysis, a little bit of psychology, just so you understand people and how they react to certain things. And after that, I hate biology, but there seem to be certain necessary things. But now we're starting to get into more advanced ideas.
It can even be something as like, I think, even if your coach is, for example, you learn a lot from being coached while you coach other people. Personally, I think that's also really cool. Always have some type of guide.
That's a requirement no matter what.
Oh,
you don't skip that one. So that's why I'm not mentioning, because I'm talking about the stuff that you don't have to do but should. Coaching other people to get good at coaching, that's a requirement.
Being coached by someone else while you coach other people. I think that's cool.
Also finding a mentor.
Yeah, finding a mentor, like finding someone to guide you, even though it can be in a completely different sport than the one you're coaching. But I think having perspective from both sides
having
is
mentors.
great.
That's, by the way, the Romans talked about it all the time.
Oh, well, look at me. I said something smart.
Finding mentors is, but that's the human condition.
My job was done for the podcast this day.
I think people should understand the human condition better if they want to be good coaches. I think it's very important because, again, being an empiricist, which is where we are right now, because that's the easy way out, makes people think it's all about data. Yeah, like the person behind the curtain barely matters. That's just lazy.
Do you think participating in a competition at some point is a requirement too? Because 100%. I think that is really 100%. That teaches you also so much.
100%. 100%. Because you have to see what it's like to perform under stress. And again, like you don't have to like what you do to perform. Most competition people hate that day. Doesn't matter. It's about performing, not liking it. You don't have to like what you do all the time. So that's why competitions are great. You're probably going to hate it. Good. Perform anyway, because you have to understand that you feeling good is not necessarily associated with you performing. They should not be associated. You should not be able to perform only when you feel good. That's a mistake. That you're stuck on the anecdotal side. That you cannot separate performance and feeling good. It's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Perform regardless. Anyway. It's going to be a long podcast. So anything else, bring it on. See you guys next
Bye.
week.